So I'm in the studio today and we are going to be looking at what you can achieve with just one light setup. So I'll be using a constant light for this, using the Ulanzi V-Light 120C and a softbox. I'll be shooting on a mixture of film and digital using the Mamiya RZ67 Pro 2 and the Sony a7 IV. One of the reasons I love using constant lighting is because of the ease at which you can shape the light, making it much easier to shoot on film rather than the guesswork that's involved in using studio flashes. Throughout today's video, we're going to be exploring 3 lighting setups that you can use with just one light, the Ulanzi V-Light 120C. Stay tuned until the end of the video for an extra bonus setup where we'll also be incorporating a Ulanzi f32 flashlight alongside the constant light. The first setup we're going to be looking at is using the Ulanzi 120C and a softbox to create a simple diffuse light source using the light's CCT mode. So CCT mode, that stands for correlated color temperature, and we work in values of kelvins. So if you see a digit that has a K on the end of it, such as 5,400K, this likely means that you are working in CCT. If the number's lower, around 3,000K for example, that means that the light is warmer than a higher number such as 4,000 or 5,000K. Think of it a little bit like a scale of warm to cold. The lower numbers are warmer, the higher numbers are colder. So often we consider a figure around 5,500K to be daylight balanced. So this means that it most accurately mimics the natural light from the sun. So with this setup in particular, this first setup, we have the light set to 5,400K. The softbox is used to diffuse the light, and the bigger a softbox is, the more diffused or spread out the light source is. Because of this, you want to consider using larger softboxes for more people, and then you can use smaller softboxes where there is just like one person in frame. So we positioned the light above the model, pointed down towards her, to create some sort of directional lighting, causing soft shadows around her hair and a catch light in the top of her eyes. Because of the positioning of the model, kind of slightly away from the background, there is less light hitting the backdrop, which creates this darker colour and more separation between the model and the backdrop. So this is a great way to utilise depth in an image when you're still only using one light. The great thing about using a light such as the Ulanzi V-Light 120C is that it also has RGB options, meaning that you can move away from CCT mode and relying on white light, and instead you can get a bit more creative using any kind of coloured light source without having to have, additional tools such as lighting gels. So again, we positioned the model away from the background in order to create that separation between the model and the backdrop, and to try and control the spill of the coloured light so that it doesn't hit the backdrop, and we do have that separation. To further this, you can add a grid to your softbox which controls the spill of the light even more, meaning that we can light the model with the coloured light without having a coloured backdrop too. In terms of the positioning of the light, in this example I played around with having the light source come from the side of the model, creating more directional light, again by altering where the shadows fall. Another great way of using coloured light, especially when you're shooting on a white cove, and this is one of my favourite ways to use coloured light, is to reflect the light onto the backdrop to create different ambience, different backdrops without having to invest in actual different coloured backdrops like coloramas or fabric backdrops. So you're essentially just painting with light here. You're making the background a different colour just using the light source. So it's a really simple technique, and it literally just requires you to point the coloured light at the backdrop. It works especially well with white and light coloured surfaces that are going to reflect that light well. You will also need some sort of other key light to light your model, but natural light, like we've used in this example, will work great. So you don't necessarily need another continuous light or another strobe. You can just use natural light as the light that lights your model. So in the final part of this shoot, we moved on from shooting with a singular constant light, and we introduced an on-camera flash into the equation. So using the Ulanzi f32 flashlight alongside the V120C, we were able to experiment with a technique referred to as dragging the shutter. Dragging the shutter refers to using a slow shutter speed on your camera and dragging the camera as you take an image while simultaneously firing a flash. So the slow shutter speed will blur the ambient light, which in this case is the light coming from the constant light, the V120C, whereas the flash is going to freeze your subject, resulting in an image like this. The process takes a lot of trial and error to really perfect the camera settings and your movement. So your best bet is to get stuck in straight away, play around with changing up the way you move your camera, at what speed, as well as the power of the flash and your shutter speed to be able to get the desired effect. One of the ways in which I really enjoy using this effect is to point the light so it directly hits a reflective surface, such as an item of jewellery. This can create kind of like a light trail that looks really interesting in the final image. Having a good constant light, especially with RGB controls in your arsenal, is a great way to ensure that you always have access to a variety of different looks and different tools in your studio work. There are so many instances on set where a client will request a different lighting setup, or you'll be on shoot on your own and you'll realise that you need more variety in what you're shooting. And utilising a light like the Ulanzi V120C, whether on its own or in combination with other lights, means that you have more options to help you problem solve. Using just one light entirely, we shot 2 really simple but effective lighting setups. Introducing natural light, which is something that is readily available, or a second light. You can use the Ulanzi V120C to add more depth and interest into your image, even helping you cut costs by reducing the amount you need to spend on coloured backdrops. And of course, pairing the Ulanzi V120C with a f32 flash is the perfect way to combine flash with constant lighting and create more interest in your images. Next time you're stuck in the studio, give a Ulanzi V120C a try and challenge yourself to see how many different looks you can achieve with just one powerful light.